What's the first thing that comes to your mind when you hear the word ritual? Is it a scene from a movie, a religious ceremony, or maybe just a personal habit you have? For most of us, rituals are an inseparable part of life. From our morning coffee routine to our yearly holidays, they give us a sense of order, meaning, and belonging. But some rituals are so strange and profound that they can stop us in our tracks. They challenge our modern understanding of life, death, and belief. Today, we're going to explore some of the most surprising and powerful rituals from human history. We'll find that behind the strangeness lies a deep, universal human need. Viking funeral rituals. A final voyage to glory. When you think of Vikings, what comes to mind? Perhaps fierce warriors, brutal raiders, or fearless seafarers? But their funeral rituals reveal a far more complex and spiritual worldview. For the Vikings, death was not an end but a glorious journey to the next life. A continuation of their heroic existence in a place called Valhalla, the Hall of Fallen Heroes. This is why their funeral ceremonies were as grand and significant as their battles. The scale of a Viking funeral depended entirely on the status of the deceased. A wealthy chieftain or a renowned warrior would receive an elaborate ceremony that could last for months. The body would be placed inside a burial chamber or, most famously, on a specially crafted long. The ship was not just a vessel, it was a sacred symbol of the soul's final voyage. Inside the ship, they would place all the deceased might need in the afterlife: weapons, armor, food, and even their most prized possessions. The Oseberg ship burial in Norway is a testament to this, containing not just a queen's body but also finely crafted textiles, sleighs, and a personal cart. This was all meant to accompany her to the afterlife. The ceremony was overseen by a seer, a shamanic priest or priestess, who performed rituals to guide the soul. The most controversial part of the ritual, as documented by the Arab traveler Ibn Fadlan, involved a slave girl who chose to be sacrificed to accompany her master to the afterlife. This act, while horrifying to us, was seen as an honor and a path to freedom for the slave. The ship would then be either buried in a large earthen mound, a physical landmark to honor the dead, or in the most dramatic ceremonies, set ablaze as it was pushed out to sea. The smoke rising from the burning ship was believed to carry the warrior's soul to Valhalla, where they would feast and fight for all eternity. But Valhalla wasn't the only destination. The Vikings also believed in other afterlives, such as Folkvanger ruled by the goddess Freya, and the realm of the sea goddess Ran for those who drowned. These complex beliefs show us that for the Vikings, death was a transition. It was not a time of sorrow, but a final, heroic act. The grandeur of their funerals was a way to honor the dead and ensure their success in the afterlife. It was a glorious farewell to a person who had lived and died with honor. Do you think our modern funeral practices, which are often solemn and quiet, have lost some of the spirit of celebration for a life well lived? Ancient Egyptian mummification, a ritual for immortality. Now, we travel to a civilization whose entire culture was built around the concept of the afterlife. Ancient Egypt. We all know about their pyramids and elaborate tombs, but what about the core ritual that made it all possible? Mummification. For the Egyptians, the body was essential for the journey to the afterlife. It had to be preserved so that the soul could return to it. The process of mummification was a complex ritual that took about 70 days, a number deeply symbolic in their religion, representing the time it took for the god Osiris to regenerate after death. The ritual was not for everyone. The most expensive method, reserved for royalty and the very wealthy, involved a series of intricate steps. First, the embalmers would use a long hook to remove the brain through the nose. They believed the brain was worthless and simply discarded it. The internal organs, except for the heart, were then removed through an incision in the abdomen. The heart was left inside because the Egyptians believed it was the center of intelligence and emotion, which would be needed for the final judgment in the afterlife. The organs were then placed in 4 canopic jars, each with the head of a different deity, to protect them for eternity. The body was then packed with a special salt called natron and left to dry out for about 40 days. This crucial step removed all the moisture, which prevented the body from decomposing. After the body was completely dry, it was carefully wrapped in hundreds of yards of linen bandages. This was a ritual in itself, with priests placing amulets and charms between the layers to protect the deceased from evil spirits. The most important part of the entire ceremony was the opening of the mouth ritual. This was a magical rite performed by a priest using special tools to symbolically reanimate the mummy's mouth, nose, eyes, and ears, allowing the deceased to breathe, speak, and eat in the afterlife. The entire process was accompanied by spells and prayers from the Book of the Dead, a collection of magical spells and religious texts believed to guide the soul through the underworld. The purpose of mummification was not just to preserve a body, it was a religious ritual to ensure immortality. The Egyptians believed that after death, the soul, or Ka, would be judged by the god Osiris. The heart would be weighed against the feather of Mat, which symbolized truth and justice. The scribe god Thoth would record the result, while the god Anubis guided the soul. If the heart was lighter than the feather, the soul was worthy of an eternal life in paradise. If it was heavier, the heart would be devoured by a demon, and the soul would cease to exist. Can you imagine a world where your eternal fate depended on the literal weight of your heart? The Japanese tea ceremony, a ritual of mindfulness. Let's look at a ritual that is entirely different, one that is not about death or the afterlife, but about life itself. The Japanese tea ceremony, or at its heart, the tea ceremony is not about drinking tea. It's about mindfulness, aesthetics, and creating a perfect, unrepeatable moment. The tea ceremony is a highly choreographed ritual that dates back to the 15th century. It was developed by Zen Buddhist monks as a form of meditation. Every single movement, from the way the water is boiled to the way the teacup is held, is a deliberate, practiced act. The ceremony is guided by 4 principles: wa, harmony; kai, respect; sei, purity; and yaku, tranquility. The host meticulously prepares the tea for their guests. But the ceremony is not just about the host. The guests also have a role to play. They are expected to be present, to appreciate the beauty of the tea, and to engage in quiet conversation. There are different types of ceremonies, from the informal chakai to the formal chaji, which can last for hours and include a full meal. The ceremony takes place in a dedicated tea room, the chashitsu, which is designed to be simple and rustic to evoke the aesthetic of wabi-sabi, finding beauty in imperfection. The path to the tea room, the roji, is a garden meant to cleanse the mind and prepare the soul for the ceremony. The host carefully purifies the teaware, a symbolic act of cleansing both the objects and the minds of the people present. The host then carefully prepares the matcha green tea, whisking it into a foamy consistency using a chastened bamboo whisk. The tea is then served to each guest with a bow, and each guest takes a sip, appreciating the taste and the warmth of the bowl. The entire ritual can take a long time, sometimes several hours, but every second is filled with meaning. The tea ceremony is a ritual for our modern world, which is so often filled with distractions. It is a reminder to slow down, to be present, and to find beauty in the simplest of things. It's a testament to the power of tradition to provide a sense of peace and order in a chaotic world, and to embody the principle of ichigo ichiya, or one time, one meeting, reminding us to cherish every moment. How do you think a ritual like this could benefit our fast-paced lives today? The Sati ritual, a complex history of sacrifice. Now, let's explore a ritual that is as controversial as it is powerful. The Sati ritual in India. Sati, a Sanskrit word meaning chaste woman, refers to the now outlawed ritual where a widow would immolate herself on her husband's funeral pyre. Today this practice is banned, but for centuries, it was a deeply ingrained custom in certain regions of India, primarily among high-caste Hindu communities. The origins of Sati are a subject of intense debate among historians. Some argue that it stems from ancient myths, while others suggest it was a practice limited to the aristocratic and warrior classes, a way to prevent the family's wealth from passing to another lineage. The question of whether Sati was a voluntary act or a result of social pressure is complex. In some historical accounts, women are said to have walked into the fire of their own free will, believing that a life without their husband was dishonorable and without social standing. They saw the act as one of immense courage and devotion. However, many historical documents show that women were sometimes coerced into performing the ritual by their relatives or community, who feared the financial burden of a widow. The act was believed to purify the family line and ensure the couple's salvation in the afterlife. The widow who performed Sati was regarded as a goddess, and her sacrifice was honored. The banning of Sati came in the early 19th century during British rule in India. British authorities saw the practice as barbaric and inhumane. However, the ban would not have been possible without the tireless efforts of Indian social reformers, most notably Ram Mohan Roy, who fought to end the practice from within. The history of Sati is a powerful and complex reflection of a society's beliefs about gender, honor, and death. Why do you think the sensationalized image of rituals, rather than the true historical one, has endured for so long? Aztec human sacrifice, a pact with the cosmos. The Aztec civilization, in what is now Mexico, had a ritual that, to our modern eyes, is perhaps even more shocking: human sacrifice. For us, the idea is horrifying, but to the Aztecs, it was a fundamental part of their belief system and a crucial act for the survival of their universe. The Aztecs believed that the gods had sacrificed themselves to create the world, and to keep the sun moving across the sky and the cosmos in balance, humans had to repay this debt with blood. They believed that without a constant supply of human hearts and blood, the sun would stop, and the world would end in darkness. Their rituals were not acts of cruelty but rather acts of profound piety and religious devotion. They were the ultimate form of thanks to the gods who sustained them. The sacrifices were performed on top of great pyramids, in front of massive crowds. The priests would cut out the hearts of the victims, who were often captured warriors from enemy tribes, and hold them up to the sun as an offering to the sun god. This was not a ritual of hate, but one of cosmological necessity. The victims themselves were sometimes treated with great honor before the sacrifice, living a life of luxury for a year before their final moments. the sheer scale of the rituals was staggering. During the dedication of the Templo Mayor, it is believed that tens of thousands of victims were sacrificed over a period of 4 days. After the ritual, the skulls of the victims were placed on a tzampentli, a massive skull rack, as a monument to the power of the gods and the Aztec Empire. This ritual was at the very core of Aztec society, influencing their art, their architecture, and their political system. It was a terrifyingly practical solution to a terrifyingly important problem: keeping the universe from falling apart. Incan, a sacred offering, but perhaps no ritual is more poignant than the Incan. In the Andes Mountains, the Incas would perform a ritual involving the sacrifice of children. This was not a brutal, violent act like the Aztec ritual. It was a beautiful and peaceful ceremony performed to prevent natural disasters, honor the gods, or to mark a significant event like the death of an emperor. The children, chosen for their beauty and purity, were considered divine messengers. Before the ritual, the children would be taken on a long, ceremonial journey from their home to the mountaintop along the Capacon, the vast Inca road system. They were often given a feast, dressed in their finest clothes, and given a special drink that would put them to sleep. They would then be left on the mountaintop to peacefully freeze to death, a painless end. Recent archaeological discoveries, like the well-preserved ice mummies, have shown us the peaceful nature of this ritual. They were found with their bodies intact, surrounded by intricate ceremonial objects, dressed in fine clothing, and placed in a fetal position, as if sleeping. For the Incas, these children were not victims. They were offerings to the gods, a sacred gift to maintain the balance of the universe. The Sky Burial of Tibet, returning to nature, let's now turn to a ritual that embodies a profound respect for nature and the cycle of life: the Tibetan Sky Burial. This ritual is a funeral practice where a human corpse is placed on a mountaintop to be consumed by vultures. For many of us, this idea is shocking and even disturbing, but for Tibetan Buddhists, it is a deeply spiritual and practical act. Tibetan Buddhists believe that the body is just an empty vessel for the soul, and once the soul has departed, the body holds no value. The ritual of Sky Burial, or Jader, is seen as an act of generosity and compassion, a final offering to the earth and its creatures. The body is taken to a sacred mountaintop, where a monk and a Rogapa, a ritual master, perform a ceremony. The Rogahab then carves the body into pieces to make it easier for the vultures to consume. This practice also has a practical side in the harsh Tibetan environment, where the ground is too rocky and frozen for burial, and wood is too scarce for cremation. The vultures are considered dekini, or sky fairies, and the ritual is a way to ensure the soul's swift descent to heaven. When we look at these rituals, from the beautiful to the brutal, what do you think they tell us about the human condition? The Manwu Masquerade of Nigeria, ancestral communication. Let's explore a vibrant ritual that connects the living to the spirit world. The Manwu Masquerade of the Igbo people in Nigeria. Manwu literally means spirits of the dead, and the masquerade is a performance where men wear elaborate masks and costumes to represent the spirits of their ancestors. The masquerade is not just a performance, it is a spiritual event that serves as a bridge between the physical and the spiritual world. The masks are not just costumes. They are sacred objects that are believed to be possessed by the spirits they represent. The masquerade is a way for the community to communicate with their ancestors, to seek their wisdom, and to ensure the well-being of the living. The masquerades are held during festivals, funerals, and other important events. The masks themselves are incredibly diverse, from beautifully crafted wooden masks to monstrous towering costumes that can be several meters high. The performances are accompanied by music, dancing, and chanting. The masquerades also serve a social function, reinforcing the community's values and social hierarchy. The spirits, through their masks, can offer advice, pass judgment, or simply entertain the community. They show us that throughout history, humans have sought meaning in the chaos of life and death. Whether it's through a grand ship burial, a quiet cup of tea, or a solemn sacrifice, rituals are a way for us to connect with something larger than ourselves. They are the language of our deepest beliefs and the stories we tell about who we are. They define us, bind us to our communities, and give meaning to the most important moments of our lives. The common thread in all these strange and fascinating rituals is the human desire for control, for understanding, and for meaning. In the face of an unpredictable universe, these cultures used rituals to make sense of the world and their place in it. Do you think modern life has lost some of the rich meaning that rituals once provided? Should we make more room for such traditions in our modern lives?